Met fans. We are back for another episode of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel to Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to t2t.org. That's T, the number 2t.org. I'm John Arezzi, and here with me, maybe not as anxious as I am during the heat of this pennant race for the postseason. He's the man who has seen his share of September high-pressure baseball. Former MLB skipper Terry Collins. Terry, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, John. I'm very excited. You know, it's an exciting time in baseball. Anytime you're in a pennant race, boy, you know, there's a lot of energy going on. So I'm excited to see how the next 15 days plays out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's every game. The pressure is there. And I know, you're in the game. You've been in the game. You manage. You've been there, done it. But for somebody like me who has lived and died with this team, it's like every pitch, every inning, every game ramps up that anxiety level. So, but it is exciting. I'll give you that. I'd rather have that than the alternative.
That's right.
Exactly. All right. So let's dive into the Mets past week, a very successful homestand for the New York Mets. And we're going to take a look at that upcoming schedule as well. But right now, the leadoff. It was a great week at home for the Mets. They won 8 of 9. They gained a lot of ground for the second week in a row. It's really, Terry, a tale now of 4 teams and 3 wild card spots. Mets and the Braves tied for the third spot. They're both just 2 games behind San Diego, who has the top wild card spot, and they're just now a game and a half behind the defending nationally champion Arizona Diamondbacks. So can this get any more exciting as we all head into the final weeks of the regular season?
It can't, John. I mean, they just showed you what can happen when you have a hot streak. I mean, you can gain huge ground up, and that's why you have to take care of your business. Even though, again, we're not naive to think that the players aren't aware of what's going on at the other places that are involved. But man, this is when you got to worry about tonight and tonight only. And when this game's over, then you focus on tomorrow's game. You can't have whatever happens tonight, win or lose. Hey, look, you're still in the hunt, so you worry about tomorrow. And it's a great time to be in a pennant race. There's nothing better than that.
Oh, I agree. Even though the Mets lost a pretty tough finale against the Reds on Sunday, you got to have a look, and you got to take a look at that outing by Luis Severino, who made another amazing outing. He gave up just 1 run over 6 2/3, 8 strikeouts, just 5 hits, only 2 walks. This guy is pitching his best baseball in years.
I mean, and he's never thrown this amount of innings. I mean, there's a lot of things, and you would think at this time of year, you'd start to get fatigued, and he's not. He's pitching as good as he has all summer. Manaea's pitching very well. Quintana had a good outing. David Peterson's been great. So their starting pitching has really, really been solid. And yeah, it would have been nice to have Senga, whether he comes back or not. But you still had getting good, solid starting pitching. And their bullpen in the last 10, 12 games has been off the charts great.
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon that pitching. The starting pitching rotation has been spectacular. Their staff ERA is just 2.05 over their past 10 games. Truly amazing again. And the bullpen has been solid. Can the Mets pitching now be their best asset as each game takes on more of a playoff atmosphere?
Well, it could be, John, but one of the things it does, when you're really pitching good, it just kind of makes it easier on the offensive side. It's like when you're not, if you're pitching scuffing and you think, God, we got to score 5 runs today to win a game. That's tough for an offense. But now, they're not giving up hardly any runs, and so the offense says, hey, we got to go out and good 2 or 3 runs. We're going to win. And so it just makes it easier on both sides. So, the game has always been about starting pitching, basically, but pitching all together. And when you're pitching well, you're gonna get on a hot streak.
Yeah, it's all coming together on the pitching side, and that offense has been really hot. But you need them to step it up even more to give even those pitchers a break. If they have a 4 or 5 run lead, it makes it easier on everybody. I want to take a look at one guy who's made a really big difference, who was not even a factor until May 15th when he was given that third base job. And that guy is Mark Vientos. He has an OPS close to 900. He's got 24 home runs. He's emerged as perhaps one of the best young sluggers and top three third baseman in baseball. 2 home runs on Friday night. His first at bat, and then that walk off in his last at bat that'll be sure to be on the 2024 highlight video. What have you seen during this evolution of Vientos this year, and how big of a role have the veterans on this team, like a JD Martinez, impacted him?
Well, to start out with, first of all, I thought what happened to Mark Vientos in spring training proved that he's a professional. You know what? He didn't make the club. He had a good spring, still didn't make the club. And you have 2 options. You can either go down and mope and pout about not making the team, or you can go down and prove him wrong. That, hey, look, you belonged on that club. And that's what Mark did. He went down, started tearing it up in AAA. When Beatty started having struggles, they said, well, let's bring this other guy up. He's playing great. And he's grabbed that opportunity and ran with it. And those are the kind of guys you like. I love those. I love guys who grab that opportunity and just take off with it and show you that, hey, look, you made a mistake, but because I'm staying here and this is my job. And that's what Mark has done. And I think the effect of what JD Martinez has done on that club, he's had several meetings where he talks about his ideas of hitting, which is, and he made up all of this stuff for years by himself, because I saw this JD when he was in the minor leagues. Good hitter, got to the big leagues, didn't do very well out of the gate, got released, got signed on, had a chance to, another chance to get in the big leagues, and just really studied the art of hitting, and has become one of those team gurus that you turn to when you want to talk about what it takes to be a good major league hitter. And, you watch him hit. He hits the ball from the right field line to the left field line. He's got power all over the ballpark and knows it. So all he wants to do is put good, solid swings on the baseball. And you're watching Mark Vientos do exactly the same thing as JD. And you look around at that lineup, everybody in that lineup now, they just, hey, all they want to do is put a good swing on the ball. They're hitting opposite field homers, and that's why every night somebody different is coming through for the Mets.
Yeah, that's certainly true. The Mets did lose Jeff McNeil for the remainder of the season with a wrist fracture during Friday's win. He got hit in the wrist by a pitch. It wasn't thought about, anything serious that night, but they did testing the next day. His wrist had swelled up, and it revealed a low impact fracture, but a fracture nonetheless. He is now not due back this regular season. If the Mets get into the playoffs and they get deep into the playoffs, maybe you'll see him back. But the question, Terry, is were you surprised when DJ Stewart was brought up to replace Jeff rather than an infielder like Luis Angel Acuna, who's been playing second base, shortstop, center field in Syracuse? His name has been tossed around. Carlos Mendoza is saying, well, he needs to play every day, and there's only a couple weeks left in the minors. But were you surprised with that decision where DJ was brought back rather than a guy like Acuna?
I was not, John. At this time, this isn't the time where you want to bring a rookie up and throw him into the fire in a pennant race. You take a veteran guy, bring him up. Obviously, Stewart's done a good job off the bench. I mean, he was doing great he carried the club for a week or 10 days. He was swinging so good. But he's used to being in the big leagues, and that's nice to bring those rookies up sometimes where you can blend them in, as you're late in the season. But right now, it's when you've got 15 games to go, 16, whatever it might be, you've got to have that veteran leadership and those veteran guys who don't feel necessarily the pressure that a young guy might feel if he's slammed in the lineup. And it's the easiest thing to say, hey, we want you playing every day, because if they do have another injury, if something happens to Iglesias, Acuna's got to be the guy. So you might as well let him play while he has the chance to play.
Yeah, with only 2 weeks left in that minor league season as well, maybe it's a strategy where let's give him a chance every day, and if we need him at the end of the season, he's an option for us. Terry, taking a look at the upcoming schedule, after Toronto, the Mets are north of the border right now, playing the Blue Jays. They will then travel to that city of brotherly love, and there's no love there for the New York Mets fans, of course, who will be making a pilgrimage for that critical 3-game set against the Phillies. Then they return home for a final homestand of the regular season, 3 against the Nationals, 4 against the Phillies. So 7 games against the division leaders who are still within striking distance. In baseball history, crazy things have happened before. Terry, what are the give us your assessment on the Mets' upcoming road trip, them coming home for that final series, and also I'd like to ask you what are some of the wildest finishes to a season that you remember during your career?
Well, obviously, as I said earlier, it's every game now is important. Every game is big, especially when you're going to play teams that are playing for positioning. You're going into Toronto, and right now the Blue Jays, they would do like nothing more than to spoil your season. But when you go into when you play the Phillies 7 times, I'm telling you, it is going to be game time. It's going to be on. The Phillies want to, they want to clinch. They have a chance to, if they beat up the Mets during those 7 games, they got a chance to clinch it and move on, get ready for the playoffs. But you also, if the Mets get hot and play great, they're going to be breathing down the Phillies next for the division title. So it's going to be a huge next 2 weeks because every game, and I don't care if you're playing the Nationals or not. I mean, again, we've talked about it, John. They're big leaguers still. And so what you've got to look at every night is it's the most important game of the season.
Yeah. Certainly, and any memories of any wild finishes that stand out in your career that you've seen, maybe as a skipper or even not?
Well, I mean, you can go back. I mean, you look at what happened to the Mets many years ago. They had I think a 7 or 8 game lead with 12 to play or something and lost it. So
2007,
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wasn't a Met then, but it does happen, and I've seen teams come out of nowhere. We've watched. The Arizona Diamondbacks last year barely get in the playoffs. The next thing you know, they're playing in the World Series. So, there's crazy stuff can happen. That's why it's a great game, and that's why you've got to play 162. And, at the end, you just never know which game is going to be the most important win or the most devastating loss of your season. But, baseball is such a highs and lows that, the fan base, you have a bad man, break up the team, get a new – and then all of a sudden you have a great June. Let's go to the trading deadline. Let's go get every good player that's out there. So, but that's why it's an exciting sport. Because there's so many games that are played. You can, you get to ride the wave for a while, but then you got to tread water for a while, and it's that's why I love it. Anything can happen, and it's not over until someone says, "Hey, you're done."
Yeah, this is the most exciting season for me since 2015. And Terry, finally on the leadoff here, because of the incredible run, there's a lot of people comparing this 2024 team to your team in 2015. It's been the banter on SNY with your colleagues there, other members of the media, and of course fans on the internet. But I'm going to go right to the guy who was in the dugout leading the team 9 years ago. Are there any similarities in your opinion? If so, what are they? And also, what are the differences between your club and the 2024 Mets?
Well, as you know, John, the game has changed quite a bit. I mean, the rules have changed immensely to what's going on. But, with what we're seeing right now, their starting pitching has been very good. And in 2015, we had great starting pitching. Now, we went out and we got ourselves 2 guys in the bullpen, Tyler Clippard and Addison Reed, who really bridged that 7th and 8th inning gap so we could get to Jeurys Familia in the 9th inning. And the Mets, now that Diaz is back being the dynamic closer that we all know he can be. Now all of a sudden you've taken Reed, you've taken Ottavino, you've taken Danny Young, and you've put these guys in roles now that you can bridge those, 2 innings instead of 4.5 innings that they were having to do earlier in the season. You not only have to get through to it. So that's a similar trait. Back we got Cespedes at the trading deadline, and what he was slotting him in the middle of that lineup. Gave us that guy we really relied on, that huge hitter. But Lindor basically he's putting up the same kind of years that that Cespedes did. Yeah. I mean, plus surrounded by with what Pete's done. Even though Nimmo hasn't been hitting like we know he can, he's still you look up and he seems like he's on base all the time. And Mark Vientos is came into the fold, as did Conforto when we brought him up. Right. He became a dynamic member of our lineup every night. So, there's a lot of similarities that we're like on both teams. But that's why I really believe I think the Mets are going to get in, and I think when they get in, they're going to be a tough team to play.
Yeah, I think so. And for me, just seeing the fan base, the eruption of the fan base, the more people showing up, it's that atmosphere and it lifts the club up and they're fully behind the team. And it's just kind of similarity to me is 2015, 2024, the fans, and just how exciting and magical this all seems to be. So we ride the wave, like you say, and I'm with you. I think they're going to make it, and I think they're going to be a tough team in the postseason. Well, Terry, this week we had a great call with Peter, Tunnel to Towers Foundation, about your involvement with the upcoming annual 5K run and walk taking place in New York City on September the 29th. Registration is still open for the event with a post run concert by the Zach Brown Band. Terry, how's your training going?
It's going fine, John. It's going fine. You sent me a clip of a race, what the race was a couple years ago, I guess. And the only thing I don't want to do is get trampled. I can tell you that right now. I'm 75 years old. The last thing I need is be caught up with all those soldiers and all those firemen carrying all that equipment. I'm going to stay off to the side. I can tell you that. My goal is to finish. That's my goal is to run across the finish line. And that's, I don't know how fast I'm going to do it, but I'm very, very anxious to do it because it's a great event for a great foundation.
Yeah, that video was certainly heartwarming. And also, Terry, I certainly recommend that as you are walking, running during this race, no autographs and no selfies with anybody as you're completing it.
I hope not. I don't want, John, anytime you're running, you get a pace going, you got to maintain the pace. So you don't want to be distracted, but I'll be very aware of who's around me because again, I don't need to be jumbled around too much anymore.
No. Well, it's just amazing that you're doing it and participating, and you've become such a great ambassador for them, as Peter had said in our call. And this is such a big race for them, this event. It really retraces the heroic footsteps of FDNY firefighter Stephen Siller. 9/11, Siller ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel into the Twin Towers where he was killed. The foundation was started in his memory, and that's where the name Tunnel to Towers comes from. And one thing that Peter also mentioned to us, Terry, is when the runners come out of that tunnel, they're greeted by firefighters holding banners with the names and faces of the 343 FDNY members killed on that day. It's a very emotional high point of that whole event. And before we wrap it up and go to a brand new commercial with New York Mets bench coach John Gibbons for Tunnel to Towers, we want to mention the upcoming Heroes Cup event taking place this week, Saturday, September 14th. First responder hockey teams from across the New York area will be competing for the Cup at the Menon Arena in Morristown, New Jersey. Proceeds will benefit Tunnel to Towers. All right, Terry, it's time for that new commercial with New York Mets bench coach John Gibbons. Let's go to that.
Hi, I'm bench coach John Gibbons. Let's go Mets. Let's help the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. I'm involved in professional baseball, right? And, kids, people look up to, we're not the real heroes. Military vets, firemen and cops, those are your real heroes. We all don't lay it on the line, but we sure look for them when we need something, don't we? A simple donation of just $11 a month will go a long way to support our first responders, military families, and our veterans who are in need. These are the true heroes who protect us all.
Okay, TC, Gibby involved with Tunnel to Towers with a commercial. You've done one. We've got Johnny Franco. There's been so many. Just great participation this year. We're going to check out this week in Mets history, and this is going to be a kind of a special one for you. It was the weekend of September 7th of 2015. Your Mets went to Nationals Park in Washington, D.C., having just lost a series in Miami, and you were 4 games up on the Nationals. The opener of the series saw an 8-5 win, most remembered by the David Wright emotional home plate fist bump, which unleashed a lot of stored energy waiting to explode. And then on September 8th, the Mets staged an amazing comeback, which we're going to take a look at right now.
In New York and Washington, Matt Harvey, in the midst of this innings controversy, does himself no favors in the bottom of the first, facing Clint Robinson with 2 on and 2 down.
And he pulls one through the shift, a base hit. Rendon around third. He'll come home with the first run of the game. Clint Robinson with an RBI single, and the Nats lead 1-0. And he goes out to the first pitch and has a base hit. That chases home Escobar with the second run of the inning. An RBI single for Ian Desmond, and the Nats are up 2-0.
Here's Ian Desmond. Will he be bunting? He just had a chat with the third base coach, Bob Henley. First pitch, he squares, he bunts hard back to the mound. Harvey bobbles the ball, goes to third anyway, way too late, and the bases are loaded. Harvey sets. Here's the 0-1. Fastball line to center, base hit. Escobar scores. Robinson to third. The ball overrun by Cespedes. It goes all the way to the wall. Everybody might score. Robinson's in. Desmond's in. Around third, digging for the play. Taylor. He will score standing. 4 runs come home. And it is 7-1 Nationals here in the 6th inning.
Bases loaded, 2 out. That's down by 5 in the 7th. 3-1 to Granderson. And it's outside, ball 4. It forces in a run, and it'll bring Cespedes to the plate as the tying run. Bases loaded, 2 out. Mets have 2 runs home in the 7th. Cespedes the tying run at the plate. The Mets down 7-3. Facing Drew Story. Cespedes drills one down the line. That'll go to the corner. Flores is in. Uribe right behind him. Here comes Granderson. The relay throw to the plate. Not in time. A 3-run double for Yoenis Cespedes. The Mets have scored 5 runs in the 7th. This is now a 1-run ball game. Now Storen has walked the next 2 hitters. 3-0 coming to Duda. And he walked him to force in the tying run. The 6th walk of the inning issued by the Nationals bullpen brings home the 6th run of the inning as Cespedes scores to tie the game at 7. 2-1 to Darno. And Travis rifles one to right center field. Over comes Harper, and he makes the running catch to end the inning.
Sean Neuenhuis batting .207 with 3 homers, going up against the veteran right-hander Jonathan Papelbon. The 1-0 pitch. Into the air to deep right center. This baby's going. It is going. It is gone. Holy smokes. Kirk Neuenhuis has given the Mets the lead. This place is in shock. And frankly, so is this booth. It is 8-7 New York.
Jay Reese Familia, who comes in for the save.
And the most delicate of ones.
Anthony Rendon is 2 for 4 tonight. You think he's still going to be bunting 3-1?
No.
Can't. And he bunts it hard down to Duda, has a play at second, gets the out, no relay, and the Mets pick off the lead runner. The bunt is unsuccessful. Brings to the plate Junel Escobar, who already has 3 hits tonight. Familia ahead of him 0-2. Bouncing ball, Wright's got it, to second for 1, Murphy to first, double play, and the ball game is over!
Mets earn the stunning 8-7 comeback win to increase their lead over the Nationals.
That's exciting.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
That was incredible. Yeah, you got excited just watching it. But I mean, that emotion in that dugout after, when you saw Kirk hit that home run, I'm telling you, you couldn't believe the energy in the dugout. It was off the charts.
Yeah, then you came back for another victory and swept the series. And was that the time you kind of knew, all right, I think we've put them to bed at this point? And
absolutely. People don't, one of the things that kind of goes unnoticed, Drew Storen was one of the best relievers in baseball. And we absolutely knocked him 2 days in a row. We beat him up pretty good. And I'll tell you what, boy, you talk about losing some confidence, and he was never the same after that series.
Wow. I mean, when you go in with a 4-game lead too, and you come out with a 7, and it's September, it's kind of like, all right, maybe we could take a deep breath now. And it was an exciting season, Terry. And I was in Cincinnati when you guys clinched. JP Ricciardi had gotten me some tickets, and it was a few hours from Nashville, and what an exciting, what a great season that was. So it's really cool to be able to talk to you each week about this stuff, but that was a great clip to watch. All right, so TC, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to have an encore of a very first Talkin' with TC that we did on our debut show. And it's hard to believe. We've done 22 of these now, and this was the first one we taped back at the end of March. So let's go to this special encore Talking with TC with none other than the one and only number 5, the Captain David Wright. Now it's really time for the first ever Talking with TC, and we're excited about this one. So let me talk to you, everybody out there, and you'll know who this is once I get into it. Our first guest on Talking with TC played his entire career with the Mets organization, 7-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glover, 2-time Silver Slugger Award winner. His 1,585 games with the Mets are the second most in franchise history, just behind Ed Kranepool. And he ended his career holding the franchise record for hits, runs, total bases, doubles, RBIs, walks, sac flies, and extra base hits. He got the nickname Captain America after the 2013 World Baseball Classic, hitting .438 in that tournament. But to the Met fans, he's simply known as the Captain. It's an honor to welcome David Wright to the Terry Collins Show.
Thanks for having me. You forgot leader in strikeouts, probably errors, and probably a lot of other things too. So I feel honored to be the first guest. So thanks for having me, TC.
Well, David, it is without a question an honor to do my first show and have you be the first guest. I mean, it's very cool. Our relationship is great, but it was so fun to watch you play for so long. And, I just thank you for coming on the show and kicking off this initial podcast that I'm going to try to do this year.
Well, you're the best, and, I'd do anything for you. So thanks for having me, and I'm excited to talk some baseball. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we should. David, as we were getting ready for this podcast, and of course, we were trying to discuss who was going to be on. And I said, we got the ideal guy, and I know he'll be on. And I said, there's some things I've always wanted to ask you that I never really did ever get to ask you. And that, the one was, when you got first to the big leagues, when you got called up the first time, every rookie, he comes up and his eyes are, big and he's so excited about being there. What guy in that clubhouse made an impact on your career when you were first got to the big leagues?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of them, but there's actually two that I've talked to in the last 2 days. So they come to mind, and that's Joe McEwing and Cliff Floyd. Those two guys for me took me under their wing. Joe, I lived in the same apartment building as Joe. He'd take me to the ballpark. He taught me how to get to the ballpark. This was before all the GPS and all that stuff. So I remember sitting in his passenger seat of his rental car, writing down directions as we're going, over the Triborough into Queens, and take exit so-and-so and make a right here and a left here. And then obviously Cliff Floyd really, really took care of me. He taught me that you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, to listen twice as much as you talk and to take it in. Because I had a veteran group, and a lot of those guys gave me a little bit that I tried to take from each of them, whether it's Al Leiter, John Franco, Mike Piazza, and tried to apply it to my game. So I had a very veteran group, but those two in particular really took me under their wing.
Dave, was there one thing, as you're getting ready to play, was it the game prep? What was it that you took from them that you then initially gave to some of the guys when you were the captain, or those young kids that were coming up, they're maybe still there today, that you said, hey, look, this is a piece of advice that I got my first year. I've never forgot it. And you related to them. Anything come to mind?
I remember being an 18-year-old, my first spring training, semi-fresh out of high school, and, eyes wide open, bushy tail, just so excited to be in Port St. Lucie for my first minor league spring training. And I remember we used to have early work, and we'd get there at the crack of dawn, maybe 6:30, eat breakfast, and have our early work, say, starting at 7, which is early for a baseball player. And, I remember walking out to the backfields and hearing this commotion going on one of the backfields. And I'm like, what is that? So I like being places early. So I mosey on back there, and I see Mike Piazza, arguably probably the best hitting catcher of all time, Hall of Famer, working on his catching at 7 o'clock in the morning on a backfield in Port St. Lucie in February or early March in spring training. And that always stuck with me. And I always told myself, if Mike Piazza can go work on his defense at 7 o'clock in the morning in spring training when he's already a Hall of Famer, I never can say that I'm good enough. I always need to keep working. And that lesson stuck with me.
That is impressive. And that's That's one of the, we'll probably get into it shortly, but that's where, in my time when I go back now and I watch the minor league kids practicing and stuff, and, that early morning stuff comes early, but, there's no replacement for working. And that's where, I've always thought, your game prep was off the charts great. And you never missed a day. You never missed a workout. You never missed, as you got ready for the season. I remember, we sat down one of the first days and we talked about how many at bats you needed for spring training. And even in spring training, you said to me the one time about, hey, look, I got to go back to back. You don't need a day off every other day. I need to go back to back once in a while. So, those are things that as a manager, you hear your star player talk about, hey, look, I want to work hard. That's the stuff I think that plays that runs throughout the entire organization.
And let me say this quickly. I remember Terry Collins running the minor leagues for the Dodgers when I was in the minor leagues for the Mets. And I remember that enthusiasm. And I remember looking over at the Dodgers organization and thinking, wow, this is big time. And it starts with Terry Collins, who's running the minor leagues, running from field to field. And that's why I was so excited when we hired you as manager. I wanted that enthusiasm. I wanted that excitement because I remember as a young kid seeing you kind of set the tone in that spring trainings or whether it's minor league games in the middle of August in, whatever town when it's 1,000,000 degrees. I remember you setting that tone. And that's why I was so excited, to not only play for you, but to learn from you and kind of bring that enthusiasm to the big league level.
Well, I want to jump in on that because – no, go ahead, Terry.
No, I was just going to say, so David, as we get into this, and John, if you want to add something, please jump in because, the one thing about it, we're going to get how how he feels, and he's not going to pull any punches with us, I can tell you. So.
No, I no, really, because when I hear David talk about him seeing you running the minor leagues, running spring training for the Dodgers, because I always loved seeing the interaction between you and David on the field during your tenure and David as a player. And this question was really for both of you. It was the first one I had for you guys. It's like there's no doubt about the mutual respect, the admiration you had for each other. And I wanted you to both talk about that bond and how it's endured to this very day. David first, and then to you, Terry.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the things that always stuck with me, besides Terry's enthusiasm and his upbeat, positive attitude, has always been that he had this open door policy where, once a month, once every couple of weeks, he'd gather the veterans and we'd go in his office and we'd have kind of a state of the union per se, where Terry would be like, hey, give me what's going on in the clubhouse. Give me how you're feeling. Give me, what I could do better, what we could do better, both baseball wise and off the field, the culture in the clubhouse. And that's something that having that open door policy and that line of communication with your manager, I think is one of the most critical features, maybe even more so than teaching the game of baseball, is being in touch with your players and taking their temperature every now and then as to how things are going, because inevitably you're around these guys so much that you're going to get in these little spats or these little arguments or these little fights. And the reason for these meetings is to kind of come back together and say, okay, let's hash it out. If we got some issues, whether it's with, the third baseman or the manager or the star pitcher, whatever it is, let's hash it out behind closed doors and figure it out and let's move forward. And I think that that's something that I always appreciated with Terry, is that open door policy and that ability to communicate with all the players.
Well, John, I will tell you, the first time I met David, I had been hired as the field coordinator, and I came down to Florida in January to get ready. We opened up the complex here for guys, and I was having dinner one night, and this guy comes over and he said, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm David Wright. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy came over to say hi to me. That's pretty impressive. This is the star player. And that struck me so, I was so impressed by that he would take the time just to come over and introduce himself, because, he's a star. He didn't need to have to worry about that, but it was how he went about things after that. When David talked about the open door stuff, there were times during a season where I knew I had to get this guy a day off. He's always played 155 to 161 games, 62 games. So I don't know, every couple of weeks I would call him off. I'd come off to the side and I'd say, hey, look, I got to get you a day off this week. And he would say, what do you think? And I'd say, well, how about Thursday? And who's pitching? And I told him, maybe this guy. And he would say, I'll tell you after the game on Wednesday. because that's his love for the game, his passion to play for the game. And that's what made for me, this guy, he didn't want days off. He wanted to be on the field. He knew his worth to the ball club. And he just, even though he knew he probably could use a day off now and then, he knew his importance to the team. And that's where I felt, hey, look, the Stars, they get it. They understand how important they are, and they're going to be out there. And this guy did it better than anybody else around. I mean, there were times that this guy played. I mean, the year he got hurt, he never said a word. He just showed up, got ready, and played good. And played. Finally, his neck was still stiff. He probably couldn't turn it anymore, but he just kept playing and playing. But I tell you, to get this guy a day off was tough, man. I mean, really tough.
You fought pretty hard,
the other
David.
thing, John, I'll tell you the other thing I saw in New York. Every person that ever came in, if the community relations department or anybody else, the one guy they wanted to meet was David Wright. And so they would come in the clubhouse into the outside. They wouldn't come in the main clubhouse, but there was a little room off to the side, and they'd come in and say, "Hey, David, I've got Joe Blow out here. He wants to meet you." And every time David grabbed the 30 seconds to a minute and went out and said hi to the guy. Now that's respect for the fans and for the game itself. And in that town, it played without a question.
Hey, I remember when my nephew was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. We went to a game in Atlanta at the Westin Buckhead, and he saw David on the steps going up to where the Palm Restaurant was there in Weston in Atlanta. And he goes, "That's David Wright." I was like, "Well, I'm sure, he'd say hello to you." And he goes, "I'm afraid." And then all of a sudden it's like, I just said, "David, do you have a second?" And you came down and you took a picture with my nephew, and he'll never forget it. And that was just so memorable. But yeah, what a great, everyone wanted to say hello to David. And David, I don't know if you know this, or even Terry, if you know this, we're taping this on March 21st. And on March 21st, 2013, 11 years ago, David, do you have any idea what happened that day? Or should I refresh your memory?
I mean, I have a feeling that this day had something to do with being named captain.
That is correct. On this day, in 2013, you were named the 4th captain in the history of the New York Mets. Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez were co-captains in the 80s. Johnny Franco, captain from 2001 to 2004. You became captain in 2013. What did that mean to you at that time? And I want to talk to Terry about that too. I want to get his opinion on that. And what was that appointment of captain? What did that mean for you at that time? And what should the role of a captain for a team in today's era be?
I'm glad you brought that up, because every time you bring that up, it brings a big smile to my face. And looking at Terry brings a big smile too, because he was the one that delivered the news to me. And one of the best days of my career, certainly being viewed in the light of a Terry Collins and his coaching staff and the front office and ownership and players in that kind of role was something that I took very seriously. And to this day, I feel like one of the biggest honors that I've ever received. So, to be viewed as a captain or a leader for the organization, for the city, for the fan base, for my fellow, players, was incredibly amazing. And you could see by the smile that it's something that, I cherish to this day.
John, I will tell you, I approached David that spring and asked him if he'd ever, that I would like to name him the captain. And he said, I don't think so. And I said, well, think about it and get back and we'll talk about it again. So we talked about it later. And he said, I want to, before we talk, I want to go find out about with my teammates, how they would feel about it. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted him to be the captain. I didn't want him to make speeches. I didn't want him to have to get up in front of the club and give a pep talk. I wanted him to lead by example. You've already heard about him talk about, that he's on the field, an 7-time All-Star at 7:00 in the morning in the cage, taking ground balls, his respect for the fans, signing autographs, taking a picture with your nephew in a hotel on the road, the respect for the media in New York. always available. And there's a lot of places you won't find this, but in New York, you have to be in front of your locker when that game is over. This guy's in front of the locker. He answered the questions. He answered them properly. His respect for his teammates. I mean, all of those things are what, for me, is what leadership is. It isn't about how good a talker you are. It's about how you go about things. And, I used to ask David, hey, can you talk to so-and-so? Because I thought his impact as a peer player had a lot more clout when he would talk to a player about an issue as opposed to the manager. The players get tired of hearing the manager talk. But when you have someone that locker next to you who's going through the same things you're going through, who's been through the same things you're going through, it means a lot more. And this guy never said no. And that's why he was, for me, the ultimate captain.
And today's day, captains, there are not very many of them, really. And I know the Mets have several guys. Well, maybe this guy should be a captain. Lindor shows his leadership abilities. Of course, Pete Alonso is the kind of the face of the organization. And what does the role of a leader mean today? I mean, has it changed? You think the role has changed if someone is appointed captain today in comparison to when, David, you were playing?
I think for me, it was something that I never wanted to do different. I think that I was honored with that title for a reason, and I didn't need to change something or become all of a sudden this boisterous, loud, speech-giving motivator that, just really wasn't me. There was a time and place to, get on somebody, or there was a time and place to hold a team meeting and to get up and say a few words. But I always respected and followed the types of players that didn't do that very often, because when they did do it, it meant a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So, I reserved that for, and Terry and I talked about it before, we'd go through a stretch where we just stunk, and, I'd look at Terry and be like, hey, how you feeling? You think now's a good time? And we'd have that dialogue. And that's what made it so great, is that, I wanted to hear what Terry thought as well. And, when, I accepted that role as captain, I wanted to lead by example. And I think that I made it a point to even try to do that harder, once I was named captain, because I wanted these young guys that came up in New York to not necessarily, follow me because I was loud and boisterous and yelled in front of the cameras, but I wanted them to follow me because I tried to be the first one to get my work done. I tried to be the first one in the weight room. I tried to be the first one, out on the field for stretch. I tried to, make sure that these young players saw me get my work in and followed that example to be on time, to play the game the right way, to be courteous, to, do the things away from the field that you're supposed to do. So, that was very important to me. So that would be the role that I foresee other organizations, or the Mets organization, when naming another captain or the next captain, is, somebody that is genuine, somebody that's organic, somebody that's doing it for the right reasons, not just because there's a camera in front of their face.
Mm-hmm.
John, and I think what David's come from is very true, but, we all make it a little bit sound like, he was all, which he was all business, but you know what he did? He lightened up the clubhouse. This guy is a fun-loving person. Don't let him kid you. As dedicated as he was to his job, he made the clubhouse fun. You couldn't walk in the clubhouse without having 2 or 3 guys sitting around him, and they were laughing. They were laughing about something. And so he lightened up the entire clubhouse. If it was, he's the one who said, "Hey, we need the belt." That year he went out and got the belt that we gave the player of the game, and guys enjoyed it. They enjoyed coming in the clubhouse. And I've talked to you before, John. I used to be in the clubhouse a lot, probably more than managers should be, but I enjoyed being in there. And every time I was in there, and if he got up to move, 3 guys turned their heads to see what's he going to do. And that, to me, and again, the example that he set, and I'm not sure players today, understand that. I really don't. They're so caught up. There's so much media and social media and all the other things, and when behind those closed doors are where it plays, where, you hang that ego on those doors before you walk in that room. And that's what I think, David did. And I'm not sure today's players are like that. And I just think he learned that as he came through. But, you got to have fun at the ballpark. And David created fun in our clubhouse.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great point. And by Terry, is that I do think that, and Terry and I have had conversations about this, and I think we came to a point where we said, an hour before game time at home, there's so much downtime. You get there so early. You got batting practice first. There's a lot of downtime in between batting practice and the game. And, it's inevitable that players are going to pull out their phones, or players are going to want to play cards, or players are going to want to, we had a little mini basketball hoop that guys would shoot from in the clubhouse. It's inevitable that guys are going to want to do this. But I think that, like Terry said, you got to have fun, because in the grand scheme of things, it's a bunch of big kids playing a game for a living. But, we agreed that, I think it was an hour before the game, that stopped. And we started preparing, going over game plans, going over video, starting mentally prepare for that game. So I think that there is like Terry said, which I think is often overlooked, that camaraderie, that, hey, after a tough loss, let's go out and grab some dinner after the game, and let's talk some baseball, or let's talk like, hey, what's going on? Just to free things up, so that when we come back to the field the next day, we're playing for one another. I know that the guy to the right of me, is having a baby, and that's stressful, and that he's not getting much sleep at night. And therefore, we're pulling in the same direction, and that we have that unity because we know each other, not only as players, but we know each other away from the field as well.
Yeah, you both of you have seen changes in the game, obviously, and there's there's generational changes that have happened in baseball. A lot of young guys that are coming in. What changes have you both seen with some of the younger players that are getting into the game now compared to your era?
Well, for Terry's case, they're starting to wear helmets now.
That wasn't funny, dude.
I know. You go first, Skip. Go for it.
Well, obviously the game is changing. And so, when I first was coming up, and it's stuff I even taught when I was managing, you talent plays, John. Talent wins. And so what you try to do is you take that talent and try to teach them how to win, and the importance of winning, and how to win baseball games. Sometimes you got to pass the baton to the next guy. And now it's everything's wrapped up in what each and every guy does, what his numbers dictate. I mean, I have spent a couple of years, when I left managing the Mets, I went through the minor leagues, and the analytics started to come in, and guys were more concerned about their numbers than how they executed stuff on the field. And I mean, last year, I watched a lot of minor league games, and after the games, I would talk to some of the guys, and they're saying, well, geez, my exit velocity was down. Well, you didn't make contact 3 times. So why don't we start working about, a 2-strike approach to put the ball in play? And so maybe that stuff changes, but because that is what everybody looks at now, that they've gotten away from the ultimate thing. And that is in our game is to win at the major league level. And for me, that starts in the minor leagues. And so these young players, do they learn how to win in the minor leagues? I'm not sure, because everybody downplays winning in the minor leagues. When I was a minor league manager, I got accused, hey, look, you want to win too much. I said, yeah, when that guy goes to the big leagues, when my player gets to the big leagues, I want him to be able to contribute to winning. Tom Lasorda did not care if what somebody hit in AAA until they got to the big leagues, and they showed him they could help him win. They could help him win a baseball game. And I'm not sure today. And again, I don't sit in meetings in the minor league clubhouses anymore. But when I watch the minor league game, it's not played the same. And I think there's a way that to get good players, talented players. I'll tell you one thing: the guy that's on the screen right now, he wanted to win every night. He wanted to win, and when we didn't win, he tried to figure out how tomorrow we can win. And I bet you could ask David how many nights he cared. How about, I watched one game, he got a base hit to right field off Mariano Rivera to win a game. And I don't think he cared if it was 100 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour. It landed where nobody was at, and we won a game. And I think that's where, the players today are kind of getting away from that and so worried about the stuff that's showing up on TV.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that there is certainly a place for the analytics, and I think Terry did a wonderful job when he managed in taking the numbers and utilizing them. I think knowledge is king. If you have the knowledge of the analytics and the feel of a baseball mind that Terry had, you can combine the two and have a perfect marriage. And I think that that's what makes managers great and what makes managers relatable to the players is having that feel, but also having the knowledge of the analytics. But I'm with Terry 1,000%. I think that not only in the professional level, but at the amateur level and on down, that we're not teaching these kids how to play the game correctly. I think that the game is changing to the point where, like Terry said, it's, these different numbers when taking batting practice as opposed to working on a feel that's going to be successful in the game. I think that the situation should dictate your mindset or the game plan that you bring to the plate per at bat. Every at bat isn't the same. There's going to be a time where you need to get a runner over. There's going to be a time where you need to get a runner in. There's going to be a time where, hey, you're 3-1 sitting fastball, let it eat. Swing as hard as you can. But that's not every situation. So I think that there needs to be a marriage between the two of that feel and that teaching the game correctly and playing the game correctly with the analytics.
Very good point. Yeah, there's so many changes today. But I'm going to go back in time for a minute, David. Your relationship with Jose Reyes. I can't begin to tell you how much joy the Met fans felt when you guys were both emerging. I mean, I've been a lifelong Mets fan since I was 9 years old. I went to my first game in 1966. And there's been a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of ups and downs. We were so starved for stars. And you and Jose emerged at the same time. Really, you became stars. The fans loved you. One of my fondest memories was in 2006, seeing you and Jose celebrating on the field with the cigars, with the champagne, holding the signs. And that was just incredible that night. And it was a lasting memory. And then, of course, time passes. 12 years later, you're at your final game. And to your left, Jose Reyes is there. And what an emotional night it was for the entire city of New York. And to see you and Jose embrace when you were leaving that game was a memory that everybody remembers today. It'll live in everybody's memory in Mets history. What did Jose Reyes mean to you as a teammate, as a friend, and do you guys still stay in touch with each other?
Yeah, the short answer is that we're brothers. I remember being 18 years old, Jose right around the same age, Guy Conti, who was running our minor leagues at the time, who's a good friend of both Terry and I's, pull us in the office. And I'm 18 years old. I think I did something wrong, or, my mind is starting to race. Like, what is the boss going to say to me, or what did I do wrong? And he pulls us in and we start talking a little baseball. We start talking amongst ourselves, and he ends the conversation with, you guys are going to be the left side of this infield for a long time at the big league level. And I remember both of us walking out of that at 18 years old and like, wow, we gotta, and that made us want it even more. Having that relationship, having that confidence walking out that door of that meeting, I'll never forget it. And from that day on, it was almost like we wanted it together. We didn't want it individually. We didn't want it for ourselves. We wanted it for each other. And that was the way that we played the game. We went through a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but the constant was that Jose knew me just as well as I knew myself. I knew him just as well as he knew himself. And it was so funny how two kids from completely different backgrounds, speaking two different languages, eating two different types of food, listening to two different types of music, could bond at that level and have a brother-like relationship. So, one of the best friends that I've had in the game. And it's a comfort level. When I look to my left, I want to see Jose Reyes manning shortstop because I know where he's going to play certain hitters. That makes me play a certain place. And we don't even have to go over the scouting report. I know by where he's playing or what his body language is, he could communicate with me that way. And that's how well we knew each other.
Yeah, that chemistry was evident. and you just
Mhm.
knew looking at you play. And that last game was just it was an amazing memory. It really was. Terry, back to you.
Well, thanks, David. I'm going to let you go. I just want to thank you again for all your time tonight. You mean a lot to me. You mean a lot to this organization. Obviously, one of the all-time great Mets and one of the all-time great players. And I know you're enjoying your time with your kids. You should have some fun. And I look forward to seeing you down the road here pretty soon. And again, thank you so much for being my first guest on my first show.
Well, you're the best. And at some point, my 3-year-old boy, I'm going to send him down to Florida to have you teach him some baseball, because I want him playing the game the right way. So thanks for everything you've done for, my career. Thanks for, being a friend, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Thank you, David.
That was great to take a look back at that first Talking with TC with David Wright. And I get goosebumps even watching it, Terry.
Yeah, he's so special, John. And I've said this many times. He was a great player. Had he not gotten hurt, he's a Hall of Famer. But he's such a good person. That sometimes everybody talks about what a great player was. That doesn't even take into the fact that this guy, his respect for people, the game, who he was, the city he played in, made him that much more special. And so for him to do the first show was really, really cool.
It really, really was. It was great, and we'll have more great guests on Talking with TC as we progress during this exciting pennant season. But right now, we're going to go to the Tunnel to Towers Amazing Hero of the Week, and this week it's truly heartwarming. We're going to pay honor to Army National Guard Sergeant Carl Sampson, who receives his mortgage-free smart home from the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Let's go to that right now.
We gather here today in Picayune, Mississippi to welcome the Sampson family into their brand new mortgage-free smart home.
I'm Kelly Sampson. My husband, Army National Guard Sergeant Carl Sampson, suffered a catastrophic injury in Iraq.
I was in the Marine Corps and the Army National Guard.
They were going to get the mail.
Yeah.
Got on the truck and they set off the bomb with a cell phone. And that's when he got blown up.
It has been 21 years since he was wounded in Iraq. And he's been through a lot of hard times to it.
Tunnel to Towers built us a specially adapted smart home to make Carl more comfortable and independent.
Oh, man, this is gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
Carl and Kelly are going to be very happy in this house. Carl can stay home. He could have a little independence and dignity when she's gone. He'll be able to do things for himself.
That's important for him. He just loves that.
To date, we've built over 100 catastrophic land and smart homes across the country.
These houses make all the difference in the world.
Tunnel to Towers has helped us so much. I cannot wait to play with all the toys, to dig into all the features. I don't think anybody could have done it better than Tunnel to Towers. When I first met Carl, he had all his awards in a box called junk, because he said nobody cared. But he knows every time he wakes up and sees this place, he'll know people care.
Yeah, I'm thankful.
Yep.
By giving $11 a month, you're joining us on our mission to do good. Go to T2T.org to make a positive impact.
We will have another T2T Amazing Hero on next week's show. Terry, that'll wrap it up for another week of the Terry Collins Show. And you can follow Terry on X and Instagram at TerryCollins_10. And for those of you on Facebook, follow Terry there at the Terry Collins Show. You can follow me on X and Instagram at John Arezzi. Make sure to subscribe now to the Terry Collins Show, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And of course on YouTube, where we have that channel there. So go to youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. Until next time, this is John Arezzi for Terry Collins. Have a great week, everyone.